So, very good morning. My name is Martin and I run growth for the Next Web. So we're a technology publisher, and I would like to tell you a little bit more on what we do as a media company / a publisher, because usually it's quite a lot. So yearly we also do events in both Amsterdam and New York City to make sure that we can engage with our audiences over there. They attract over 5,000 attendees on a yearly basis. And in total with the Next Web, we reach over 6 million unique users every month. And we're probably going to grow that towards the 10 million by the end of the year, hopefully, with the current setup that we're doing there. That results in around 12 million page views at this stage. And as we're a publisher, we have a lot of different revenue streams and a lot of different projects that will drive revenue and drive engagement to our users. And that makes us a little bit different from how other companies or retailers approach A/B testing, because we have to take into account that there are a lot of different KPIs across different projects. And for that, we have to make sure that we monitor them all in the same way, but also use these kind of KPIs to make sure we can still scale our A/B testing. So these are some of our projects. Our newly redesigned website 2 months ago, our conference in New York, and one of the other projects I would like to highlight, as we're also an e-commerce company in some ways, our T&W Deal store, where we sell drones to quite a huge audience by now. So what qualifies me here to speak for you today is that our testing program was actually quite shitty over a year ago. We run one test a month. It was coded by me, myself, and I. Yeah, and in all honesty, of course, that wasn't very good. And that definitely wouldn't have qualified me here to scale about a lot of tests. But currently, we're running around 20 tests a month. We're playing a little bit of catch up on this. And we're trying to find out how many tests we can really run by the end of the year. But with the current approach, I think we're going to end up around 200 tests. I just checked our numbers this morning, and I think we're just started test 83 this morning. We were a bit slower at the beginning of the year. Probably by the end of the year, we'll have catched up somewhere between 180 and 200. We'll find out. And probably the goal for next year will be around 250 tests. And it seems like we really focus on the quantity of the number of tests, but because we have so much traffic, it makes it easier for us. And across that process, we learned a lot along the way already on how to improve our process and what we could do with that. So Andy already touched on a couple of things that were very important, and they're also applied to the Next Web. So we have different swim lanes and different KPIs and goals for certain pages and across the different projects, because the engagement on, for example, the conference website is way different than trying to sell drones to, and on an e-commerce platform to more engaged and techie users. So these 5 elements, I will briefly walk you through them. But first, of course, you have to know for scaling your testing program, one of the first things we needed to find out about 5 to 6 months ago is what are our goals? Like I just said, they're different per project, and we need to take them into account to make sure that we also know our different KPIs per project. So an important KPI, of course, on the Next Web, as in our technology blog, is that we really want to increase the engagement and the click-through rates on, for example, different areas of our website. And of course, we have a homepage, we have article page, but even within these websites or within these templates, you will have different aspects that are important to you. Because, for example, on the homepage, it's not very likely that somebody will use the share buttons over there. But on article pages, it really is to users. And when we found out what kind of these KPIs were, it was easier for us to also look at the different types of users. Because what Dan already just shared in his keynote this morning is that you want to look at more and different audiences for your A/B testing. Because what you could find out is that a user from Facebook has a totally different engagement with your platform as a Twitter user could be. And it could be different per device, per source, per region, and even if it's a new versus a returning user. And in our case, these kind of user segments or audiences or whatever you would like to call them are very big still. So in each of these segments, it could be that there are tens of thousands of users already on a weekly basis, and that makes it easier also to run these tests on these kind of segments. But also more in general, if you want to reach or want to test a certain thing, that we can check the results for these different segments on an A/B test to see if there's any different behavior across these different user segments. But after this, we also found out that there's still a limited amount of tests that we could run on a certain audience. Because if you know your click-through rates and your KPIs, and with that also your goals, you could figure out, like Andy just mentioned, what the certain lifetime would be for a test to run on your site. And we figured it out that it was pretty easy because we can run multiple tests, for example, on our article pages. Because we have such an amount of traffic over there, I think it's a couple of million every month on our article pages. It makes it very easy for us to split our user base into these different segments and make sure that we can run multiple tests on the same templates at the same time to make sure that we can divide our users between them, and with that scale our testing program and really reach the quantity that we're looking for. Of course, we generate a lot of ideas, and luckily, like Andy said, we don't have to write them down, but I will get back to that shortly. And what is already one of the takeaways, that you really have to create a backlog of your ideas. We currently have around 10 to 15 new ideas. We can run only 1/3 of them currently. Because at the current pace, it's just not possible for us to run more than 5 to 6 tests, probably by the end of the year around 10. But still, there is a limited amount of things you could do with that. And we try to come up with the hypothesis for these tests and then try to figure out what really the results could be based on our historical data. Then the next step, of course, if you have figured out what you could test and what the KPIs are that you're looking for, and you've selected your predefined time that the test needs to be run. Of course, the shitty part in some ways is the part that you can't scale, is just coding the tests. It's still a lot of manual labor, and you can't outsource it, or you can actually outsource it, but you can't automate this in the way that you would like to probably. So this is still, after a couple of months, and still really trying to scale our process, the thing that we can't scale yet. But the thing that we pretty fast found out that we could scale is analyzing our test results. For certain tests, we usually have only 1 or 2 main objectives. It could be, for example, on an article page that we're really trying to focus on how many people share an article, or how many people even only click on the Facebook share button versus Twitter, or what's really important is the order of share buttons, for example. We tested that a couple of times, and we saw completely different results in every test that we did over there. But as you're really focusing on only one certain metric or one certain goal on your pages or on your templates, it could also be that a lot of other KPIs are influenced by the test that you're running. Like Andy just mentioned, it could be that your test is completely busted in a certain browser or for a certain device or whatever. But you want to find out. And for that you also, and definitely in our case, we want to know what our secondary KPIs are on a certain template if we run a test. So if we increase the size of the share button, for example, we also want to know how that influences the number of clicks on our related stories at the bottom of the page. And taking that into account, that usually generates over 15 secondary KPIs, like bounce rate, engagement, time on site, the number of clicks on our share buttons, the number of clicks on our related stories. And with that, absolutely, you want to make sure that all these KPIs are in line with the rest of your test, that they're not busted, that they don't break, or that they don't see any significant changes if you're really focusing on your main KPIs. And as that was really the part that we tried to scale, it was already from the start very easy to find out that this was the part that we needed to do ourselves. We currently save already all the data that we want to have in our Google Analytics accounts. And with measuring all these secondary KPIs as well, we sent millions or tens of millions of events to our Google Analytics via event tracking. So if there's anybody from Analytics, we would love to talk to you about your premium discounts. So that's what we set out to do. We built our TNW Analytics small platform to make sure we can all build this ourselves and maintain it ourselves. So this is currently one of the first setups and a very basic version of what we try to do. It's coded by me, myself, and I because I was tired of writing all these code myself for the A/B testing. So I was like, yeah, what the heck, just write a whole platform for it to analyze the results. And one of the first things we could do over here is see the number of tests that we're currently running. Our team at this point consists of one web analyst, me, and one of our analytics interns that just joined a couple of weeks ago. And with the 3 of us, we can run quite a number of tests. But also we want to keep track of the backlog, all the ideas that we have in there, and make sure that we can someday move them to our prioritization list. And for that, we can easily add them in a form. It seems like a lot of input fields here, but in the end, I think there are just over 15, and you don't need to add all of them at the same time. And that makes it easier for all the people that are currently working on the team to really add their ideas to it. And that's one of the things that I found really important for us to scale our testing program as well, to get the rest of our company involved as well. So our CEO, not even on a daily basis, luckily, comes up to me with a lot of new tests that he wants to run. And luckily, he's the kind of guy that says, like, we need to run even more bold tests and let's screw our users in certain countries or whatever, just to see what kind of impact it will have on our overall engagement. And that's absolutely awesome. So he's also able to just add his ideas in here, and then we'll prioritize this for him to make sure that absolutely we focus on the most engaging tests, hopefully. We can see a schedule as well. So this is currently some test data that was still in there of the tests that we run in the meantime of setting up this platform. So what we can see here is really like the planning that we have in mind. So in the current case, you could see that there are certain tests in there that are planned in already. Because at a certain stage of like your product development, you also want to figure out like, okay, we're going to launch this feature, but at the same time that the feature will be launched, we need to run a new test. And that's really what our planning tool is for, but also to see the historical data on how many tests did we run in a certain week, and at what point in time was a certain test running over there. And that's pretty important to us as well. And now the most exciting part, at least to me, is that we gather all the results from the Google Analytics API. So this is in some way similar to the dashboard that you will have in Optimizely. So what we do here is when we add an experiment or edit an experiment, you could add the number of variants that you will have in the test running. And all the data for this test, which we actually run in Google Tag Manager currently, is that it will send the data via custom dimensions for the different variants to Google Analytics, and then you could pull all the data from their API, segmented by the custom dimension for your different variants, and make sure that you can retrieve both the main KPIs for that page or for that certain template, but also all the secondary KPIs. So I'm not sure if you can see it, but in this case, we wanted to focus on the number of page views per session, and we run 3 different variants plus the original. And we could easily monitor day over day what the results would be. We even could do it based on an hourly basis, but we don't find that data very informative at this point. But it's one of the things that really enabled us to really scale our testing program. And this is one of the most exciting numbers I could share with you today, that a current test that we're running, it takes about 5 to 6 hours to build it, to analyze it, to make sure it's communicated with the rest of the team. And it doesn't seem like a lot that we only shift off 20% of the time for running a specific test. But if you're going to look at it the way that we run over 200 tests probably this year or even next year, that just saved us 10 weeks of coding and analyzing a lot of tests and make sure that we can run, at this stage, at least 25 to 30 more tests on a yearly basis. And that's quite a lot compared to the number that we want to get to over the course of a year from now on. And then the next takeaway after we scale this whole process, of course, if you find out that your test is successful and that you have a winning variant, is that you have to push your code live as soon as possible. And that's usually not something that is very attractive to do so, because you have to work with a lot of developers. But in this case, I want to really give a shout out to our awesome developers back in Amsterdam, that they allowed us to be able to push codes ourselves. So who in the audience, raise your hands, can push code to a live server without using a tag manager? 8. That's not a lot of people, actually. It's still pretty scary for them as well to allow us in the live code as well. But they allowed us to do so. And with that, we were really able to really fast push tests to our live servers. So if we found out, like yesterday night, that a certain test has a winning variant and that we want to apply the changes to the live site, we could probably already do that before 7 o'clock in the evening, because we are able to make the changes ourselves. In most cases, we don't even need a developer to check our code base. That's going pretty well so far. They might regret it someday, but we're going to find out. And deploy our changes as fast as possible, so immediately within the day it's live and will be applied to, in this case, 100% of our audience. And that's really the last takeaway that I have for you. And in the last 5-6 months, we found out a lot on scaling and making sure that we can keep track of our backlog as well. But already at this stage, we can't move any faster as well. But we also know what's going to be next for us. And these are just a couple of ideas that we'll have. We're going to run more tests because we will get more traffic probably by the end of the year. But even besides like adding a lot of stuff to our TNW analytics platform also allows us to push the data in other ways. So it could be that we're And that's one of the things that we're really starting to think about is like push our new tests that are published on the next web, push them to a different Slack channel where everybody can see them. We now do it manually, but it will shave off a couple of seconds at least for every test, times 200. That's still 5 minutes probably, but still. This could be a cool project for a Friday night, hack night. And we're also probably going to create better style guides because still a lot of time for doing QA on our tests. We found out that there are a lot of issues across devices as well, like Andy talked about, or across different operating systems or browsers. So we want to make sure with our designers and with our front-end team that we can really find a way to create better style guides to run a lot of tests. So the couple of summaries and takeaways, make absolutely sure that you know your KPI framework, know what your swim lanes are, know how many tests you can really run, so you can prioritize certain tests over certain different things. Try to follow your planning. In our case, it's very easy. We come up with a lot of ideas, but as we also can run a lot of tests at the same time, it makes it very easy for us not to have a huge backlog and definitely not to have post-it notes on our desk, luckily. And what we find, and probably we're going to scale that even more in the upcoming year, is automate even more. Because we still code the tests ourselves instead of using plug-and-play tools, because we found that it's even faster to us. And if you want to run the more advanced tests, you will end up coding anyway. We can probably push that kind of code to our to our tag manager as well, where we run the code through. And of course, be able to push code live. So hopefully next year, all hands will be raised if I ask the same question. Thanks a lot for your time, and thanks to OptimizeLee for having me.